down. Andres was disillusioned, taken aback. She took the photos and left, without saying a word, went out through the door as divine as she had come in. He didn't know how to take it. If he had to stop working for her, if he had to go on keeping an eye on her husband. He didn't think about it anyway. Alicia had gone so angry that didn't pay him so until he saw a wad of money inside an envelope or a check inside an envelope. He was very fond of the envelope thing. This way, when they asked in trials if he had been given money, he calmly could say he wasn't. He had been given an envelope. The inside was other issue. Alicia got into her head spending more money with that story was a total waste of it. She was fed up with the boring life she was living with Carlos. She was going to do as Elena and announce a temporary end of the together living. She could see how she managed the situation later. At the same time, she thought about finding out who were the people her husband seemed to be so close to. It wasn't that she minded he had an affair. She clearly could see the girl was pretty, but if that was what her husband wanted, she was reluctant to give it to him. She would need a complete makeover from head to foot, and to be practical, it was easier. Change husbands. The first thing she did was calling her mother to tell her she was going to dump Carlos. Carmen didn't throw herself through the window or tear her hair out or anything. She said, "You are a big girl. You know what's the best for you." Alicia didn't expect it, but she appreciated it. She thought it would be as easier with her father, or even more, because his father didn't like Carlos. She was wrong. The counselor was kind of conservative in that family business, and he made such a scene that would get the old Alicia upset. But to this new Alicia didn't cause more inconvenience than took the cell phone away from the ear and press the red key. She had to face the most difficult part. Talk to Carlos. She was classy. She didn't use the phone, nor the so fashionable text. No, she waited for the dinner. He should suspect something when Alicia told her mother to leave them alone for a while. But it didn't even cross his mind such a thing. He thought instead it was just one of those silly things his wife did to rekindle the flame of passion. One of those things she read in the Cosmopolitan and that she believed they worked, and that he didn't mind depending on the mood. The truth is that when he heard the "give us time" was about to split his sides laughing. What the hell was this Cosmopolitan shishoo about? He didn't attach importance. Of course, later, the thing was getting clear, and as the thing was getting clear, he was getting serious. She told him she was going to live on her own. He could do as he wanted, although she doubted her mother wanted him at home, not being her there. He almost plenty knew that. Even his relation with his mother-in-law was good. He didn't think it was that good. When she finished to say all she had to say, what wasn't much, asked him if he had any doubt. He had a lot of questions, but he didn't feel like asking them. Of course, he wondered why. If someone had told her something, he was dying to tell her there was nobody else. But he also was dying to take that time Alicia was talking about, and he was afraid that if they talked, she felt homesickness and said it all was a joke, and they kept on as always. She got up and went to the bedroom. He carried on sitting there, thinking where to go. He neither was that needy. He earned well his life and had the bachelor's flat the council had given him when the tsunami's expropriations. He stopped thinking, got up, and went to the storage room, took one of the suitcases, and went to the bedroom to take the bare essentials. Alicia didn't expect him to make a scene, but neither he left so not bothered as he was going to take a plane to a routine meeting in Madrid. She wasn't looking at him. She pretended to be sleeping. She was beginning to feel she was making a big mistake, and she had handed on a plate his running away with the beach and the photo. After all, it was her who pushed him away. At the trial, he would say he had dumped him, and the beach had come afterwards, just to heal his battered heart. She was about to turn round and ask him to stay, but she decided, just for once, be a woman and face the consequences of the decision she had taken. If she was wrong, she was wrong. When he finished to mess around, he closed the door and left. A few minutes later, her mother went into the room to ask her if she was fine. She hadn't needed of her mother's love for long, even had been a nuisance when she was younger. But in that moment was so important she was there. She said everything was going to be okay. The following day, quite early, she phoned Andres. He, as soon as he saw the number, said to himself, "I knew it," and picked up confident. He expected her to ask for a date, to give him the money, and to ask him to keep on with the investigation. "Where does that bitch live?" Alicia said without a good morning or anything. "Excuse me?" Andres asked. He liked going to the point, but not like that. She made it clear to him she was talking about the woman in the picture, and Andres, pretending badly, told her he didn't know. She noticed he was lying, so she threatened him to tell her father he was hanging around her again. She did it naively. It was the only threat and it came to her mind. She didn't know her father was so scared stiff of her relation with Andres either. But he did know. And he didn't want to tempt fate. He neither wanted to make it so easy for her not to get paid. So he met halfway and gave her my address. No, in one way or another, they always ended saying my name. She didn't doubt it. She got up, dressed to kill, and came to my place, determined, until she began to see abandoned buildings and the empty shop windows with their rusty doors. Even afraid, she kept on. Over 20 Sandra's surrealist suggestions later, we thought of using the spare oxygen cylinders to refloat the tables. It took me such an eternity to load all the briefcases on the tables that I almost gave up. The cases exceeded the table's limit, so I had to pull off some pieces of the ground floor carpet to wrap the entire parcel and to tie it up with blind straps. And even so, the worst came when we had the two tables with their respective chairs out of the water, and we had to carry them to the boat. And the very worst was carrying them home. Salva couldn't believe the size of the tables. He imagined they were humble desks, nothing like those that seemed more dining room tables. And he couldn't understand either the need of taking the two chairs, although they helped to pretend. They were only two chairs. They didn't mean a big extra effort, but Salva had to get worked up, and he did. Sandra was dazzled by the chairs, so she agreed with me and Salva not to put up with us, called one of his contacts to bring a lorry. We would think how to take them upstairs later. It was the good thing my house had. It was all mine. Although nothing worked, and it wasn't a good idea left the parcels on the ground floor because sometimes people came to sleep, at the very least. As Salva's friend unloaded the goods in the street, we looked at each other and almost decided to leave them there and take the briefcases up gradually. But I wanted the tables anyway. Who knew, maybe someday I got to restore the building and turn it into my great mansion. I had the money then. I might do it. Of course, maybe it was not the best idea to draw so much attention to myself. Sandra took the chairs up with determination. Salva's friend looked up and suggested we should find a mortar pulley and took all up through the window. Between us, we hadn't even thought about it. I had the excuse of being underwater for long, but Salva should be ashamed. It wasn't to tell it to the lorry driver. There are things that it's better not to say. But I had something we could use. It wasn't a mortar pulley, it was a dragging mortar. It made an appalling noise and I had to stop using it because humidity didn't agree with it. It came to our two minds at a time. I left Salva paying the lorry driver and watching the woods. It wasn't necessary to tell him. It was obvious he had to watch them. I went upstairs excited, and suddenly, at the landing before my door were Sandra, the two chairs, and a weird silence. Before I opened my mouth, she told me in a very low voice there was someone up there, and she was afraid. Sometimes she doesn't think clearly. If you are afraid, run down as fast as you can. Don't wait for them to kill you. But I'm almost sure she didn't even think about it, so I tried not to put a very bad face. It probably was Ramon or some of his clique. Such a big effort, and they came to take the treasure away. Well, I was going to deny it all till the end. Too snoopy I was. I tried to see through the stairwell who it was, but I neither could hear or see anything. I was almost sure it had been Sandra's imagination, and I went up confident. There was someone actually, one lady of A Coruña with all the letters. I didn't know her then, but she was Alicia. The truth is that I don't know which one was more afraid. I'm quite sure she was, although, considering the way she looked, it wasn't much. I had that naive idea that when some of them faced one of us in a situation like that, they started to run. Of course, they couldn't be in a building like that. "Do you live here?" Alicia asked. I told her I did, and asked politely and with sweet voice if she wanted something, not to drive her away just in case she was a client. She really looked like she was a rich girl. "You aren't the one on the picture," she said, giving me the photo Andres took to Carlos and Sandra. "Well, I'm not," I said, expecting Sandra didn't come up because the photo was very deceptive. "The red bastard lied to me," she said, angry. I thought she was talking about Carlos and tried to calm her down. I told her that I was sitting at that table and it wasn't what it looked like. She didn't seem to listen. I told her Carlos was a friend of mine's lawyer and she was other friend of my friend. No! Andres is the rat bastard, she said at last. He told me the girl in the picture lived here. Andres! I didn't need to say I didn't like him. She noticed it in the way his name sounded. I told her he obviously had lied to her, as was to be expected. She seemed to be very talkative, so I opened the door and invited her in. I also called Sandra to come up, because the poor girl had been waiting for a while. When Alicia saw Sandra, her face lit up with such a spite look that I thought it ended in an argument. And since Sandra knew Alicia was Carlos' wife, she was a bit aggressive. But not knowing how, they began to chat peacefully. I turned on the telly and went down to the third floor to start the dragging motor. It started with no problem, making the noise I remembered it made, but it started. I took the windows out of the frame and threw the cable to Salva. Suddenly, I heard behind me. What the hell is that racket? Alicia shouted from the door. It's this machine. We are going to bring up a pair of tables, I said, pretending naturalness. Hire a moral company, for God's sake! The walls are resounding, Alicia said. I looked at her astonished, because to have come to my place without an invitation, got angry with Sandra and interfered in my business. She was too much opinionated. Go to watch the TV or get lost, I said without giving more options. At first she looked at me scared, and I even thought she was going downstairs, but in just a few seconds she was standing at the door again. I'm not leaving, she said. I don't have where to go. She stuck, as if it was my fault. What is more, as if I had to solve it. She could sell half per heroin and rent a hotel room for several days, and it didn't seem she liked living alone for long. If she was mad at Carlos, she'd better become friends with him again. I thought they were one for the other, without a doubt. Well then, go to watch the telly, I said. You just have where to go. And afterwards, she said. And afterwards what? I asked. Did you let me stay? She said. Not at my place, but I'll find something for you, I said in a bad mood. You are one of these, aren't you? She said. Of which? I said. The ones that wander around the old A Coruña, she said. Look, girl, don't be such a exquisite, because I can do both. Bring up the table and throw you down, I said. This time she thought I was serious, and I truly wasn't. It's the typical I told Salva or whoever instead of fuck you off, which is less refined. But she took it seriously. She didn't say anything else and went up with Sandra. It was all I needed, another person in the way. At least, none of Ramon's clique had put in an appearance. Salva shouted from the street nobody could get that thing up. I thought it all was going well because the motor didn't smoke. Because of that, and because I was minding the Alicia's thing. I stopped the motor and went down. The table hadn't moved, not the slightest. People looked at us as if we were crazy. I didn't think there were so many people in the street. The thing is that this circumstance limited our chances. we couldn't take the material step by step, which was our last option. At this point, yes, it's true, we are always arriving at points like this. But life is like that, and that's that. As I was saying, at this point, we had to apply the theory of the spots after a chocolate indigestion. If you can't eliminate them, you'd better cover them with whatever is needed. We would be on watch, discreetly, of course. The way of hiding those two big shapes in the middle of the street was pretending a stuffed crepes stall. Maybe it sounds grotty, but in Paris there are many. But of course, as they are in Paris, they seemed more refined. Anyway, that was the only thing we could do, taking into account the time and the means we had. I took down the little cooker we had to heat the coffee up when we spent the night at the Old Coruña, the posh set. It could seem more reasonable to use a thermos flask, but Salva liked the coffee made in a pot and freshly cooked. He's a kind of gourmet. And I liked making sandwiches in the frying pan that resulted less squashed than in the sandwich toaster. I know the point. We used the tables as a counter, placing them in L. We hardly could move them to the sidewalk to make a U with the folding table we took down, leaving a way out to the building's entrance. Those curtains I had kept to give as a present for Sandra when she got married served as a tablecloth. They covered the stall with glamour. Not half. I took them at the Finisterre Hotel in a super luxurious room. It's kind of stingy as a wedding present, but I wanted to use them to make a wedding dress. If Scarlett could, we also could. They were maroon and golden, spectacular. We took down one of water drums, flour, the cooking one, we didn't deal with the other, eggs, cocoa cream, cheese to spread, and cooked ham. That was all we had. People looked at us with curiosity, maybe with disgust. The comments were of distrust, but as soon as the frying pan got hot and the first crepes were going out and the breeze and the midday hunger did their job, that impromptu stall was a success. And the success brought Ramon, Paco, Alberto, and Andres, and didn't bring Carlos because he was afraid of meeting Alicia, and although not even crazy, he would imagine she was at my place, he didn't appear around. Ramon looked with distrust my new business. Paco bought a crepe. Alberto kept the distance, but he had a malicious smile, and Andres had the same distrust look Ramon had. "What's going on? Are you changing trades?" Ramon said. "You'll have a license, wouldn't you?" "Of course I have a license," I said with confidence. Salva was serving the people with an ear in the talking and an eye on the briefcases. He was angry because the business was so successful we couldn't do shifts, and he might have a date. Ramon stood in front of the counter watching the customers without talking. The others were getting worked up, looking at their watches, snorting, looking around, but Ramon didn't pay attention. Paco was getting a part of the group slowly, until he got into the building. He probably hadn't told his friends he liked Sandra. I didn't mind. Sandra was able to take care of herself, and he might thank a friendlier face, or at least one she knew from some days before. Andres and Alberto realized Paco was missing when some blonde tourists of these they say that take your breath away came around and the guys pulled Ramon to go after them. The girls decided to take a pair of crepes and spent a while at the stall talking to us. Ramon didn't seem to be interested in them. The others, all of the others around, did. Ramon was immersed in I don't know what, staring into the distance, or it was what I thought then. When the girls left, which I regretted because the sales had increased in such a way, Alberto and Andres left with them. And Ramon told them he was going too, but he didn't move a bit. "How is that you are setting a business? Wasn't the money I gave you enough?" Ramon asked, apparently without double meaning. "Yes, of course it was enough. The thing is that we were so bored watching TV and suddenly we thought about this to spend the afternoon," I said. Maybe it didn't sound too much convincing, but he didn't say a word. He only stood there. Salva was all hard at work and even he forgot about the dates and the bad mood. They sure weren't that important. With the night came the dark and people left. No, not all the people. Ramon kept on standing there and Salva was about to lose control. Thank goodness his cell ringed and it seemed to be something so mega important he didn't mind leaving me alone with that pickle. Yes, with no remorse, he dropped the apron over the table and left. I noticed in his look "He's your friend, deal with it." I had a look at him saying, "You want us to divide up the money equally." He answered with another look of, "Sweet, I've been here more than 6 hours and one has his needs." And I answered, "I know, but I have a situation here." And he waved goodbye with a look of, "Good luck, I may be back before he leaves." With a kind of sarcasm, I mean, with a lot of sarcasm. And I saw myself standing there alone, in the dark, with maroon velvet sheets. Fine, they weren't sheets, they were curtains, but seeing I had no way out, and it wasn't on leave all that dust in the middle of the street, I would take the chance. Nobody went around there. Nobody went around there. If never anybody went over there, it wasn't that important left all there. But I couldn't. And you could say, why it was that important if a few hours before I was broke? What was wrong in keeping being broke? But no, I couldn't. "Why don't we go upstairs?" Ramon asked, but this time with meaning, or at least I felt it like that. With a meaning of this I needed he had for long. And then I went and said, "No, I don't feel like." I was about to say I had a headache, and luckily it came to my mind before the "didn't feel like" thing, because I could say it straight. But I really felt like, and he too. Yes, his face was disappointed when he heard I wasn't going upstairs. "Why?" he asked. I said I had at home an annoying woman who had dumped her husband and had been talking about his faults for hours. And as she was having a bad time, I didn't want to tell her to go to hell, but I neither want to put up with her. I ended telling him to go up if he wanted to. "No, I prefer staying here with you," he said. "And what are we doing then?" Carlos looked in his inner. He didn't know well the reason why she had done such a thing to him. He began to think about that distance he had noticed in the last days of their together living, and the darkness of the night, and the emptiness of his bachelor's flat, led him to the conclusion that Alicia had an affair. He had never thought about that. He always felt her so devoted and lack of imagination that he not even got jealous when men looked at her at the restaurants. She was very conservative, but a woman conservation, not men's. Not that kind they wear their wedding ring and go after whoever that moves. As he did, he thought. He had never done it, although it had crossed his mind very often. But he really didn't do it. He justified himself. He tried to sleep, but the ground was hard, so he grabbed his cell phone and called his father-in-law. The answer lasted, but as he insisted and the counselor shouldn't know how to switch the phone off, he answered at last. "What's going on?" the counselor asked, angry. Carlos told him they had to talk because he was worried about Alicia. It wasn't kind set out to a father his daughter was involved with someone else as she was a whore. Even the counselor was like he wasn't just like that to drop the thing plainly. He told Carlos to go to his place because if it was as urgent as having to phone him in such hours, he would have to see him. The counselor worked out he could take half an hour. Of course, the counselor did the maths, counting he was at his ex home. He didn't know Carlos was living at his bachelor's flat. In other words, over 200 meters far from his place. I mean, 5 minutes. He was at the Venus. Where else he was going to be at that hours in a quiet day? He didn't have nothing to do at home, and the people from the council let the cat out of the bag with his ex-wife, which was not that important in the love life way, but it was in the professional one, because she was such a bitch. He said. I would say she was just a bit vindictive. Carlos arrived in the 5 minutes we had worked out, rang the bell and waited, and rang the bell and waited, and he rang the bell again and again, and he kept on ringing until a neighbor answered shouting so loud he didn't feel like pressing buttons anymore. Well, not totally anymore. He took his cell and phoned his father-in-law again, just in case he had fell asleep, just in case he had fainted, and just because he felt like, because if he couldn't sleep, the rest neither. The counselor picked up with resignation, thinking Carlos was going to tell him it had been a moment of desperation, that all was fine and he didn't need the meeting. So he had to be agile, finding an excuse not to be at home at that hours. He used the word meeting thing, which was an euphemism everybody understood. Carlos was so glad to see his father-in-law that he didn't notice the alcohol and bad life stink he was giving off. Not even the poor man was staggering. Well, not poor, he was rolling in money. The counselor also was happy his son-in-law was there. It would be hard for him to go into the building on his own. And what happened from then on was a load of circumstances. Carlos needed a friend, even he wasn't real, one that listened to his problems. The counselor needed nothing. He didn't need anything, but he was plastered and he didn't know what he was doing. Well, he really did. Once the counselor was laying on the sofa and Carlos sitting on the latest relaxed armchair, they began to talk. Each one about his thing without realizing the other was speaking. Carlos was telling the temporary end of the together living thing. The counselor said he was celebrating he was working in a deal. Carlos told him he was living in his gloomy and lonely bachelor's flat. The counselor said he was about to have a lot of money and he was going to make a swimming pool at the loft with hot water and beautiful girls. And almost at the same time, they two said something that was going to change their lives. Carlos said Alicia had a lover. The counselor said he was getting the famous treasure of the famous legend. As if suddenly they noticed each other's presence, all the alcohol the counselor had in his blood got automatically evaporated, and Carlos got a malicious smile. Carlos thought about that meeting with us at the cafe in front of the courthouse. The counselor saw Andres' face. That was the reason why the son of a bitch was so glad. He even had suspected he was hiding something of the treasure story. He was going to grab him by the balls and drag him up to Betanzos. Bastard! He repeated in low once and again. That gave Carlos time to assimilate the treasure thing and plan a strategy to extract information. And don't believe he was thinking about Sandra. No! The lawyer was thinking, as a lawyer, about himself, as the rest, except us. He was thinking about taking the money from the old man once the old had taken it from us. So Bert himself was counting the chickens before they were hatched that he didn't even listen the times his father-in-law had said the Andres name. He was thinking the best strategy to go back to the swimming pool and therefore to the treasure. The counselor kept on with the son of a bitch. The truth is that he had no chance. Carlos got up, went to the cupboard and opened the door, searching the bar. Knowing his father-in-law, there had to be one. When he was opening the last door in the bottom, he found the Malta's whiskey, the 12 years rum, and the entire repertoire. He didn't need too much. A pair of ice cubes, a not very clean glass, and something indeterminate from several bottles, expensive of course. And the counselor gave it all away, which wasn't much for us, but Carlos saw the light. Nothing, we can stay here. The night is great and these stars are so beautiful tonight, I said naturally. Ramon looked at me as if he had noticed I was teasing him, or if he didn't believe a word I was saying. We can have a drink or something, he said. No, if the other calls for me, you know, I said. Don't worry, the others are with her upstairs, he said. I didn't count on that. I didn't remember Paco had went up, and the worst was that I didn't imagine he did. Anyway, I tempted fate and said, What others? Sandra and Paco at least, he said with confidence. Still lost, I kept on going. Really? Do they? I said. Yes, at least. They are at the window. The separated must be the one I don't know, he said with confidence, pointing up with confidence and looking at me with confidence. Oh yes, I didn't remember, I said pretending. What a big mistake. What was I going to fabricate now? Let's go. I'm beginning to think you're trying to avoid me, he said. No way, I said pretending. The thing is that... And as he saw I was taking long to reply, he said, If you want, I can help you to tidy this up. I say it because it seems hard for you to leave this tall. No, not at all, I said. Don't worry, there are only 4 little planks. Come on, it seems you are so worried. Come on, he said, laying his hand on the maroon velvet fabric of the curtains. I should show too much panic in my eyes because his face showed a very bad malice that increased as he squeezed strongly the fabric. I almost had a fit. No, come on, leave it there. Nobody comes around. Where do you want to go? I asked, grabbing his arm, getting a bit horny to make him let the curtain free once and for all. He smiled and let the fabric go. Without hurrying up, he exploited my anguish till the end. The 3 housewives were looking out of the window. Sandra should come down to mount guard. I don't know what they were doing standing there, looking to the horizon or to the ground. What was the difference? I hoped that she was kind enough to watch the briefcases. In the meanwhile, she looked at the stars. Of course, if her reasoning was, Salva had gone out, Sienna had gone out, and I had to stay here taking care of these 2 pains in the neck, she probably gave a damn about the treasure. Thank goodness she's a better person than us. Ramon had the car parked on the abandoned area's limit. And even though on the way he mentioned with sarcasm the tidy up thing, he didn't show signs of suspicion. But anyway, I didn't want to be overconfident because I knew him, and his sudden appearance out of the blue should have an explanation. And my target was finding it out. I wonder which was his. We went to a bachelor's fashionable bar, newly opened and very famous in those days. I say the bachelor thing because there were a lot of 30-something people, very affectionate. Yes, it's a subtle way of saying desperate, but I belonged to that clan, so I'm going to express it like that, affectionate. I had never been there. It wasn't within my means or my patience. As soon as they smiled at me, I felt like running away, and I usually was too tired, so I saved the effort. This time was different. As I took the man from home, I didn't have anything to worry about. We sat down, and the problem I had to face was the talking. After ordering and settling down, I didn't have much to say, so I put the face of being interesting, of having a lot of mystery inside, and a very fascinating life to let him ask the questions. The truth is that I didn't know how to put that face, but that was my intention. He neither had too much to say, or at least he took long to talk, and when he did, told me about the years he had been abroad, about his life, about everything. I'm telling you, he gave me a splitting headache. I almost thought he was doing it on purpose to make me confess I was stealing from him, in quotes, the stealing thing, because the money wasn't his. We'd better say lie. But he kept on talking. Not even as a torture was normal. Sure, he noticed it on my face, because he started to ask questions, not important, just to keep an innocuous conversation. And what about you? What do you think? What don't you think? And so. Afterwards, they played a more quiet music and people began to dance. Ramon invited me to go to the dance floor, which wasn't such a thing. It just was the space between the tables and the bar. And we danced. It was so romantic. So romantic and so peaceful. Oh God, he had stopped talking, and my head stopped to go round at last, and I could enjoy the man at last. He really danced well. I don't know if I reached the point of closing my eyes. I think I did. It's the only explanation I find. The only thing I know is that I woke up sitting on a bench, relaxed. It still was dark, so I supposed I hadn't been there for long. Or that was what I believed then. I sat up and looked around to see where I was. I noticed a deafening noise approaching. It was easy. The silence was so deep that I could hear a fly. I must admit I almost got scared. It seemed it was coming to me, but I couldn't see anything, and I didn't understand it because the stars gave me visibility enough to see something if it was there. And I didn't see it. I couldn't see anything. I could only hear that noise. When the noise couldn't be stronger, I saw a light on the horizon. A bulb in front of me that in seconds turned into a spotlight that looked at me right in the eyes, interrogating me. I was scared to death. I wanted to step backwards, but as I was sitting down, and as I wasn't able to stand up and run away, I only pushed myself. I mean, built in the back of the bench. So built in I was that I didn't know how I didn't break it into two, or how I didn't remain there as a crochet runner. When I thought a sluice gate was going to open, and the footbridge was going to slide, and a short bit-headed being with long fingers and homesickness look was going to come down, pointing at the sky with the lit-up index saying, "Home." The noise stopped, and the light switched off. A blue light switched on under the thing that was looking at me, and I saw clearly a kind of helicopter folding the propeller down and packed itself, turning into a cube. And then it went down. The light switched off, and the peace came again. It was automatic. I got up and went to take a look. There was nothing! Only a cliff and water. Just water. Salt water, I suppose. The tide was high, not enough to touch it, but the thing is that being seawater, it might be salty. I went around looking at everywhere. It was awesome, and everything was as calm as it should be. I walked to the fisherman's tavern next to the old train track. I wanted to have something to wake up, to get focus, although I was afraid of telling such a story to anybody. While I was walking, I tried to take my purse. I had to ask Salva to come and help me to go down and see what there was. I touched and touched, but I hadn't the purse. It probably had fell on the bench. I was laid down when I woke up. Maybe I had used it as a pillow. I turned round to the bench. It still was silence. It still was dark, except for the stars. There was nothing at the bench. I sat down desperate. Not only had a memory lapse of God knows how many hours, I had lost my cell phone and I didn't have money or memory enough to remember any phone number. I couldn't achieve anything by going to the tavern, so I went home. I was tired, but I had nothing to do there. When I arrived home, I expected to find Alicia and Sandra on the couch, with the telly on the commercial channel and papers and salty biscuits bags all around. But I was wrong. All was in silence. I was beginning to think I had gone deaf as a result of the noise of the supposed helicopter, spaceship, extraterrestrial ship. I only could hear silence. I didn't have the key. I remembered it in front of the entrance. I rang the bell, but nobody opened. In that case, the only thing I could do was taking a stone, breaking the so hard to preserve intact glass, and opening the door from the inside. At my place's door, it was more complex. I took a wire and put it into the lock. I turned it round and round, like in the movies, but the lock didn't open. I went down to the first floor. I took the lever and with it, I took the old door apart. It was obvious they weren't at home. Inside there was, of course, silence. I was hungry, so I turned the TV on and had something to eat. I was starting to think it had been ages that I had been into a space-time hole of this they talked about, and that when I met my friends again, they could be 40, 4 kids, and a house in the good area. The commercials channel was as usual. I pressed the teletext and breathed with relief, and with a bit of sadness. I had made my mind with the idea of being 10 years younger than the rest, and having something interesting to tell. No, it only had passed a day, just a day. There, my exciting life vanished to become the same old. What a disappointment! And there I was, seeing a fantastic vacuum cleaner, eating cold meats, finding the cold meats in almost the same condition I had left them should give me a clue, but until I saw the day on the screen, I didn't back down. Yes, there I was, so disappointed, completely disappointed, all and completely disappointed. When I finished, I went to look out of the window. Yes, the window. That window where Sandra, Alicia and Paco were when I left. The window where they were watching the stuffed crepe stall. The tables covered with the velvet curtains. The velvet curtains that hided the briefcases full with money we had rescued from the Universal Savings Bank's basement. And I was looking at the horizon and looking at the street. That silent and dark horizon with a few stars. That empty and silent street. Empty and silent. Silent, of course, but empty. Empty! Empty! How empty! The money! Where was the money? My heart started to beat strongly, really strongly, and I to walk hysterical from one side to another until I sat down opposite to the telly, and I remembered it had been a day since I left the entire thing there in the street. Oh, they probably had found a good place. Salva might find an answer to the transport problem. I had to talk to him. It was late, but I had to know what he had done. Salva took long to open. I was about to believe They all had run away to the Caribbean. In fact, Salva was always saying that was what he wanted to do. He opened the window and looked down as an old-times housewife. The ones that shouted, "Joshua, if I catch you, I kill you!" It was weird. He usually opened just like that. But of course, it was late. He opened the door, grabbed me by the arm and pulled me inside. He was shouting but stopping his voice as if he wanted to speak in low. I didn't understand why. He left alone. Who were we bothering? "Fuck you, girl! Here you are at last! Where have you been?" Salva said, upset. "I found you hundreds of times." "Oh, they stole my cell, the bag, everything," I said. I told Salva what I had seen. I must say that at least the suspicion of his face went off. But the truth is that his face was a mother's face in a hangover day. Of the daughter, I mean. He didn't believe a word I was saying, especially the folding helicopter thing. In that point, it wasn't his eyes were wide open as before. There, he tried not to laugh. He did a big effort, but not very effective. When he finished laughing, I mean, when he was more or less able to keep a tight rein on the laugh, I asked him about the tables and the briefcases. He looked at me surprised. It wasn't exactly what I needed in that moment. He said he thought I had hidden them, as he had left me in charge, and they weren't there the following day. He supposed I had taken care of it, and even he tried to pretend I noticed a bit of mistrust, of distrust. I think he almost believed I had run away with the money. I have to say that I also noticed a bit of remorse. He told me that Sandra had seen me living with Ramon, and that when Paco, Alicia and she left, there wasn't anything, and they supposed I had come back to take it with me. They were at the window. Didn't they see anything? I said. I don't know. They didn't tell me anything about that. Anyway, Sandra didn't know the money was there. She thought we had taken it with the Polly. Salva said, "What a disaster. Everything tallied. And at the end, I was the one to blame. I shouldn't leave." Each one had done their bit. Paco kept Sandra busy. Ramon kept me busy. And Salva had managed to keep himself busy. Never mind, it doesn't matter. We could take some briefcase, but we were too much greedy. Salva said not bothered at all. He made coffee and we began to think about it, to count our chickens before hatched, and we ended laughing at ourselves. We almost agreed to give a miss. They pulled our leg. We did all the work and we slaved away again. And with reasoning like that, we got angry and went out for an explanation. We didn't know what to do. The last track we had was my dancing with Ramon, so we went to talk with him. Salva opened the entrance door with a master key he had. He said that if we ring the bell, they weren't going to open. I hoped they hadn't gone to the Caribbean yet, which was what we wanted to do. Andres had face of waking up in a bad mood. He was on his underpants and leaned against the door frame like the seductive man he was. Just natural, blocking the door. "We want to speak with Ramon," I said. "And so what?" he said. He told us he was neither Ramon's secretary nor his mother to ask him for permission. That Ramon had gone to the Ancora Hotel few days before because he probably needed privacy. And Paco? I asked. Paco is sleeping. If you didn't wake him up, of course, he said brusquely. While Andres was talking, I heard noises inside, and I made efforts to see among the gaps he left. I only could see a pair of woman's legs that came out the corridor and suddenly came back to the inside. I looked at Salva and told him to go. Even the curiosity ruled me. It wasn't that strong to prefer knowing who was the owner of those legs before where the swine Ramon had hidden the money. We went to the Ancora Hotel. They didn't let us go in. They said they couldn't disturb the clients. It wasn't a waste of time either. At least we knew he still was their client. He still was staying there. Seeing that began to worry me because if he hadn't gone, it wasn't him who had taken the money. Then the hotel room was for the privacy thing. So he was involved with someone else. What a jerk! As we had nothing to do there and Salva had just lain awake, let me convince him to go to Oza, where I had told him I had seen the folding helicopter. He agreed not because he believed me, but because in the way he was splitting his sides, laughing at me, and because he felt like hearing the story again. What he didn't expect was that he would see the blue light I had described I had seen coming out of the water, and the deafening noise, which was pretty louder than I remembered, going round over our heads. We sat down on the bench. Salva sat down because he was dazzled and he couldn't stand up. There were 4 helicopters going round and our presence didn't seem to bother them. They didn't seem to be doing anything useful. They weren't carrying anything, and they didn't go out of the all-port limits. Salva felt the feeling of building in the back of the bench I had felt hours before. The spotlight came to blind us. Then it suddenly switched off, and the blue light let us see how it folded on its own. Salva's eyes were popping out of his head, and I heard a voice. Wouldn't you think I was going to let you keep it all? Would you? It was Ramon. That was what he had said in my ear the day before. Just before closing my eyes, I suddenly remembered it. When Salva got to close his mouth, we looked at each other and we read each other's mind. While the other lights flew about on the horizon, we walked to the cliff. We weren't afraid. We had that excitement of the discovery, of the investigation, of the rescue. The water was lower than it seemed. The light came from a metal platform that probably went over rails to the inside of the mountain. That was more imagination than sight, because the cliff was too straight to see farther up. We had to put our head a bit more out. I had no intention of doing it. And Salva said that no way, because he was still asleep. And I was crazy, that it was not our business, and he weighed more than me, and he was stronger than me, so he could hold me better. I was about to tell him I would do it, not because I was convinced of it, but because I was curious. It was a good job he noticed it and thought that maybe It was better idea to go along the coast to see if we find the way down. We didn't find it. We only found a projection where I supposed the gateway the helicopters used to go in was. It was simply fascinating. In the distance, we could see the Santa Cruz, Santa Cristina and Burgo lights. The day was dawning. The lights came to us, the helicopters, of course. To withdraw, of course. In an orderly fashion, they were disappearing under our attentive look and under our tired feet. For a while, the folding helicopter mystery had made me forget the phrase I had remembered a while before. Wouldn't you think I was going to let you keep it all? Would you? I heard again and I got depressed and infected Salva. So we ended sitting down on the bench again, staring at the horizon without seeing a way out. Don't get embarrassed. If you want, we can go down and see it from close up. An authoritarian voice said behind us. Salva looked at me from the corner of his eye to see what I was going to do. I looked at Salva from the corner of my eye to see what he was going to do. We turned round at a time and very slowly, just to be caught in profile in case they shot at us. The odds they hit us were fewer. On the nose, maybe. But maybe they did us a favor. He was an uniformed man. Pardon me. He was a breathtaking Adonis inside a made-to-measure uniform. After the same old pupil's dilatation, I was relieved. He wasn't a policeman, and he didn't come in an aggressive way. Not the slightest. He had a smile almost comparable to the Universal Savings Bank Blue Eyes actors. I got relaxed. Salva kept on dribbling, and the uniformed seemed not to notice me, although the shout was in plural. And without meaning to exercise my natural cowardice, or to let a friend down in face of the danger, or to run away as fast as there were sales at the China Mágica, I did it. Of course I did. I was not going to waste the opportunity. Salva would understand it, just in case I was wrong with the looks, which was unlikely. At first, I walked slowly. Then I took a run. You could see the trail from the Meras lighthouse. I went home. I wanted to make myself look spectacular, to go back to the Ramon's hotel and see if the receptionist, the director, and whoever there say Ramon wasn't there. I had in my wardrobe a suit from before the tsunami that I had never thought I would wear again, but that I had kept just in case. And the case was just there. It was a bit loose, sign that I was better than. I took fewer exercise. I really was a mushroom on the sofa. A quick look in the mirror. Not pretty bad. Weird, but not bad. Well, it seems I am at the wrong door. Fuck, the day had started hard and it was getting worse. Just one fright after another. It was opening the door and seeing Ramon leaning on the frame, not at all bothered, not at all worried. Maybe I was wrong about him. Where do you go so elegant? He asked. And he liked what he was seeing as much as he criticized me. Sure, I think I surprised him. He said we had to talk, if he could come in. But even being at my place door, with the door opened, I said we'd better go to a cafe because I didn't get all dressed up to stay at home. He said he didn't need excuses and that if I didn't let him in, he could talk right there on the landing. That he didn't mind at all. It wasn't much what he had to say. I didn't like the tone he used. I could get as cocky as him, and I told him that if it was so little, he should drop it once and for all. And he did it. You have to go down again and bring the rest. He dropped. What the rest? Where are you playing at? I asked, upset. The rest of the money. You only took half of it. Couldn't you have it hidden there at home, would you? He said, half joking. I made it clear to him that we had taken all what I had found, and that if there was something more, there wasn't at the strong room, and above all, I had no the slightest intention of being used again. He sniggered and said that it was fine for him if I was so naive to think I could lie to the rest. But he knew me very well, and he went 3 steps ahead. He made it clear to me that he was going independently, and that he had no intention of sharing the money out with his friends. But that the counselor wasn't so easy to please, that he didn't swallow the I don't know thing I had told him, and that I had just played a dirty trick on him, so I had to go down again and bring the rest up to give it to the counselor, because he had just placed the suitcases and he couldn't back the operation out. He completely disconcerted me. It wasn't the first time he did the dirty on me, and yes, I had been too naive thinking I was able to trick him. But I didn't see the point on bringing his friends and leaving them in the lurch, although it tallied with what Andres had said. Of course, I also thought it all was a comedy to take more advantage of me. He was plenty capable of it. Anyway, I told him he could manage the situation as he wanted, but without my help. He left, and while he was going downstairs, said, "We'll see." And maybe it was for the echo and the bad mood the kid was in that it sounded too gloomy. I had to speak with someone. I had to phone Sandra, but I remembered my cell had been stolen. I mean, he had stolen my cell. I ran the stairs down. It was time for him to tell me everything, wanted or not. I grabbed his arm and made him turn around to look at me. "What are you playing at?" I asked. I told him that I was not his servant, and that if he expected me to be happy not getting any profit, he was in a real trouble, because he didn't know who he was messing with. "I know it quite well," he said with a cold and distant voice. Sure, he knew, but it neither was to admit he was right so easily. It neither tallied. He gave his friends away. It wasn't that I thought he wasn't capable of doing it. Of course he was. But because the others couldn't let him go like that, especially Andres. In short, things didn't tally. I still was grabbing his arm, and to have the bad mood face he had, and to be as angry as he was, I felt him so calm down. He hadn't tried to release his arm from my hand, neither he bothered the interrogation. But there was something even more weird. When I was asking questions like, "What are you playing at?" when I was getting more upset, he looked down. Sure, there was something going on. When he dropped me in it, and I was really experienced, he usually looked at me right in the eyes, face to face, to make me believe what he was telling. Sienna, no way they saw me with a blonde. I spent the whole afternoon at the library. Yes, looking at me right into the eyes, the red bastard with a sweet smile and with a steady pulse, like the CIA agents that passed the polygraph taking two personalities on. Just like that. Just a bit less thorough because I caught him without a polygraph or so. But he tried at least. It was different now. He didn't even try to pretend, as he wanted me to find the swindle out. You have to go down there again and take it all to the surface, he said. No way, I said, smiling. I smiled because it came up like that, because I found his insistence, his neat funny. He didn't find as funny as me and got even more serious, which was difficult. Do it, he ordered. No, I replied. Do it, or we're going to lose more than you think, he said, threatening. Even that his look didn't show that intention. Maybe he was playing misleading. As the two personalities thing didn't work, now he was trying the false answer thing. More what? Time. Patience. Don't worry. I'm plenty of them. I can afford the luxury. I said. He looked at me right into the eyes. He looked at the arm I was grabbing. He looked at my hand, took it apart as it suddenly bothered, turned round and kept going down the stairs. At the landing, he turned round to me and insisted, Do it, or you are going to lose more than you can afford. And he left. I mean, he tried to go out. I went after him. I wasn't going to allow him to threaten me, and far from it, I wasn't going to let him the last word with no option for replying. I was able to hold his shoulder. He stopped, but he took long to turn round. I was about to run upstairs and lock myself in my place because that lay seemed like he was trying to calm himself down, to hold the king to kick me in the arse. He was really capable, not of kicking my arse, I hoped, but of shouting me until I was unconscious. But I didn't. I was so afraid I only could take my hand off his shoulder. When he noticed I had withdrawn my hand, turned round slowly, taking a deep breath. And I don't know if it was I with the fear or he with the emotion, but I had the feeling he had his eyes filled with tears. Although it was only that, just a feeling, because I had never seen him moved. Okay, fine, when his soccer team won and so, but not moved or emotionally moved. He looked at me, grabbed my arms as if he wanted to immobilize me. I was starting to fear the worst. He looked down, let my arms free and grabbed my neck. He got closer, and he kissed me. Then he let my neck go with a curse and said with a very sweet voice, Do it. A kick in the ass would hurt more without a doubt, but the effect wouldn't be so devastating. I stood there looking at him leaving without really seeing. When I came round, I went upstairs to phone Sandra and tell her Ramon had kissed me. I was stressed, trying to find myself, and when I remembered again, they had stolen my purse, the cell, and everything, and that probably the thief was the James Bond that had just seduced me with a kiss. I didn't think about it anymore. I ran downstairs and went to Sandra's place. To tell the truth, I thought it was weird she took so long to open. She wasn't the fastest woman on earth, but I had been a pain in the door for 15 minutes, and even her infinite patience was out of that limit. I tried one last time, and as I saw it was impossible, I decided to go in by force. It wouldn't be the first time she fell asleep on the couch with her headphones on, and then she said we left her abandoned, apart, that we didn't go to visit her. I took a run and hit the door and I opened it. I wasn't that strong. It got unlocked if you hit it a sharp blow in the very middle. Some kind of manufacturer defect. The flat wasn't in a mess, nor showed signs of violence. All was in its place. The telly was switched off, the kitchen was tidy, and the couch blanket was folded over its back. I sat down and I began to think. She couldn't be with Paco. It wasn't normal that having a flat where they could be alone, they were staying in other with two other men and another woman. I gave a step backward later and got focused on the woman at the Andres home. What if she was Sandra? That would explain why she hit so fast. Maybe she was embarrassed I saw her like that. Oh, she wasn't Sandra. She's too naive to be embarrassed of being involved with someone. She did it, and that's that. What explanation she had to give to anyone? And Alicia? What if the betrayed woman thing was a trick to make friends with us? Or worse, what if she was so jealous that she decided to get rid of Sandra? I got up. I walked around again to see if I could find something. Suddenly, I heard a humming from somewhere. It sounded hollow, as sneakers in the washing machine. Hollow and metallic. I went to the kitchen to check if she had left the washing machine on. At least, it would indicate that she wasn't too far, that I was hysterical, and that I had to find a good excuse not to pay the door repair. The washing machine's door was opened, and the noise had stopped. Once I was there, I ate something. Suddenly, the humming appeared again. It came out of the washing machine for sure. I looked inside. It was a cell phone. I took it. The humming kept on. It was my phone. It was my phone! What the hell was doing my phone into Sandra's washing machine? The first thing that crossed my mind was that I was so drunk that, as Salva had said, I had no idea where I had left anything, and I had made the purse robbery up. Okay, what really first crossed my mind was, the bloody bitch stole my bag, and I could keep on thinking it if I hadn't found it on the washing machine. The humming kept on. If Sandra had stolen my purse, she would take whatever she needed and give it back to me, and I wouldn't realize at all. It was obvious. She could do it at any moment, and she didn't need to put the phone turned on inside the washing machine. Fine, it wasn't her. The same person that stole my purse kidnapped Sandra. That was the most feasible, the most logical. The humming was going on. The humming was going on. I noticed it at last. I stopped thinking about everything and picked it up. Hello?